Booze and boards, boards and booze. Bad guys at large, it's bad news. No beer this time, so we won't lose. We found their lair, they'll pay their dues. The town is saved, so now we booze. Booze and boards, boards and booze. With Mickey and Jeb.
Got this ready? Alright.
KAPOW! That's today's game, Jeb. You're lucky I didn't really kapow you.
Yeah, I was gonna say they were thinking they could read the box, but then they saw me get punched in the face.
Yeah, because it's better than listening to one of your stupid voices.
Oh, I could have done a cool voice.
No,
I could have been like,
no,
I could have been one of the superheroes. I'd be
no.
like, I'm Lugnut. Although I don't think that's his name, is it?
Tough Nut.
Tough Nut.
I think.
Yeah.
Something like that. But okay, Jeb, you go with Lugnut. Anyways, today's game is KAPOW.
Yep.
It is actually a game that I picked up at PAX this year, which we are getting to the table really fast for something that is new to both of us.
Compared to all our other things that we got
I know we
PAX
usually
before.
Or just even Kickstarters and stuff
Yeah,
in general. It's kind of interesting. I think if this wasn't the first thing that we sat down to test, it was really, really close.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I really like that. It was, so, yeah, it ended up in my hands.
Immediately.
Pretty much. Well, I think they said it was a Kickstarter, right? And the supply that they had there, hopefully I'm going to remember this correctly, the supply they had there was all they had for this run. They just got picked up by White Wizards, so
Yep.
This is not a White Wizards printing. That hasn't happened yet.
Alright, this is a 2-ton porcupine.
Yes,
Porcupine.
two-ton porcupine. If you don't know what White Wizards is, those are the people that do Star Realms and Hero Realms and
Earth Realms. And
No, they
Underground Realms.
Epic, and I think their board game is called Sorcerer, White Sorcerer, something like that. Something
I
Sorcerer.
don't know.
We haven't actually played that.
I think they were demoing that there.
Yeah, we never found a seat. We didn't actually try really, really hard to sit at a lot of places. We found particular ones.
Mm-hmm.
We played a couple long demos.
Oh yeah.
And then we gamed.
Yep.
But anyhow, this is not a PAX review. Let's see, we have Doug Hetrick, Larry
Bogucki?
Yeah.
Bogucki?
and
Bogucki?
Carl Van Ostren.
Yeah.
Game designers.
Oh, I like this. It's for 2 heroes, not 2 people. They know I'm a hero. 13 and up, and 20 to 30 minutes.
That's funny that it says 2 heroes when there's clearly villains in the box, because they say villain on it. Well, whatever. Maybe it's a hero gone bad.
No, they're saying we're the heroes.
No, whatever.
Yeah.
You're not a hero.
My one shot.
That probably is a fair assessment for the amount of time. What did they give for
20 to 30 minutes? Yeah, definitely.
13? I don't think this is that complicated. I think you could drop it down. If the kid can read, they can, and do light math, they can play.
Mm-hmm. And once they see it, they'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Like it's nothing. So.
I mean, I've seen a lot younger kids at 13 play Pokemon, and those cards are a lot more complicated than the things that are on this. So and there's nothing wrong with the theme. There's nothing that you would be like, oh, that's a little risque or anything like that. So
well, maybe
definitely
the female villain, but
I don't.
She's not risque, but she's sexy.
Okay, whatever. Oh my gosh. Why do I...
He wouldn't let me get the first joke in. I had to throw one in there.
Yeah, so anyways, that's about it. It's a two-player versus game.
It comes with 3 heroes and 3 villains, so you can mix and match. And they say hero versus villain, but we figure you could just do...
Yeah, you can do whatever however you want. It is a dice rolling / dice building type of game. So, y'all know what dice rolling is, and they did a good job of making it so your dice aren't useless. And if you've played Dice Forge, then you know what dice building is. And actually, some of the Lego games let you build your dice too, if you've ever played one of those. But that's basically the gist of the game.
And it's comic book, superhero, supervillain fighting stuff. So
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. So I think our plan is to do hero versus villain,
Right.
and we'll see who wins it.
Right. So we're back. We have the components to KAPOW in front of us, so we'll go over the components real quick, and then we'll jump right into setup. And so, take it away, Jim.
All right, so for components, the main thing that is used in this game are the player boards that I guess have your attack, defense, and power up. So there are 2 of these, right, that come with the game, and they're identical. So each player has all of these the same as the other player. And then the game also comes with 3 heroes and 3 villains, and that's what this is. It's like a double-sided thing that's kind of like a comic book cover of it, and it kind of connects with it. So there's 6 total of those. There is the health tracker, since this is a 2-player game, I guess. I think if you buy 2, you can make it a 4-player or whatever. You've got a health tracker that has the hero side and the villain side.
And then you have the shields so that people can't see your rolls.
Yep.
And then it has like quick guide information on what everything stands for.
And then on the other side is just artwork. So
Right. So the only other thing, I mean, Jeb's correct. They are exactly the same. Other than the fact is the back of one of them says hero and the back of another one says villain.
Oh yeah, so the villain one has super villain on it.
So and it folds
And it
up
folds
like a 3-panel pamphlet, and so it actually is kind of nice the way that it stores. But again, like he said, there's no difference in them. But I mean, you're probably gonna deal them out like whoever's playing the hero and villain. And one of the reasons why they're exactly the same is so that you can have like a sparring match with hero against hero or villain against villain.
And then even teaching the game, when we learned it, they didn't involve
Right, they didn't
these,
even put any superpowers in. Although, I would say that if you have any understanding of the games, adding the hero does not add so much.
Yeah, it's not that
to
complex.
it. Like, you could just jump into it. Other than the fact is it just gives you one more thing to pay attention to. It's certainly not a bad idea to start with just that, but if you're a hardcore gamer, you could certainly just jump in with putting the side attachment on, or whatever you want to call it. So anyways, that's all the board components.
All right, so we'll talk about this real quick. There are 2 little wooden circles for health tracking. So one for the villain and one for the hero, and you just kind of track it like normal.
Yep. Okay.
There is a first player token that actually is double-sided, which I didn't realize, that one side is for when the hero is the first player and one side for when the villain's the first player.
Never thought about it, and I didn't notice it right now until you said it. But that's actually really smart, because if you forget like where it was,
if you knocked it
or
like
if
that.
if you want to keep it in the center of the table,
Right.
then of course you still have to remember to flip it, which
Yeah.
is the same as passing it. But if you do remember to do that, or you walk away, or whatever,
You'll know whose turn.
you'll know whose turn it is. So it was that's a nice extra touch.
Yep. All right. So since this is a dice battling game, there is some dice. So these are the regular dice. There's what? What's wrong with regular dice?
Oh,
What? What?
they're trait dice.
Oh, yes. Okay, I get why you're laughing now, because I never used the terms. These are the trait dice. Now that Mickey corrected.
What are these? Quick!
Those are action.
Yes!
I know that one. So the regular dice that are trait dice, they're regular dice in the sense that they're dice
That you can't build.
right. So, and then you have the action dice, which Mickey was showing.
those you can build.
Right, so these have sides that you can actually put on. So if you've ever played either a Lego game where you can build the dice, or if you've played Dice Forge, it works exactly the same, and there's a little tool once you put the sides on that you can pop them right out. Actually, it actually works quite well unless you're Jeb and you can fling them across the room. He did try to lose one of my sides at PAX, but that's okay.
It was a gray floor, and I lost the gray side.
Of course he did. But also, one of the unique components about the game is obviously there's a little bit of dice building in it with these action die.
Yep.
Just keep in mind that the components in this game are finite, so
resources are limited when playing.
That's kind of what finite means, Jeb.
I know.
And then
there's some random tokens that are left in. So these, what are they? Entangle, which I think goes with one of the heroes?
I think so, because I believe I put those on you one of the times we played.
So these, I guess you just kind of put in front of you and you have to deal with it. And then over here are these ones that say locked in, which some abilities lock in other abilities when you do them. So
basically you get them all the time.
Yep.
I mean, once a turn anyways.
And then we've got some arrows over here. One side says max health and the other says target, which I have no idea what the target's used for, and the max health is probably...
I forget. I saw somebody that had the target, and I forget
Okay.
who it was. And the max health, I can't remember either, but the only thing we could figure is, like, you take the arrow and you put it... like maybe somebody limits you. Maybe it's a villain that says that's as high as you're allowed to go. I don't know, but they're double-sided.
Yep. There's two of them, so.
Right. So, anyways, the game, just FYI, is for the most part, I would say I would give this thing probably an 85 out of 100 in terms of clearness on the rules. Not perfect. But pretty good. They did put the rules in like comic book form.
Yeah, that was my only beef.
It looks neat.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff, maybe even higher than 85%. I feel like one of the questions we had was kind of a boneheaded one. We just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But the flip side is, if two people that have been gaming a long time, and Jeb usually points the stuff out to me. He does. He's usually like, no, this is what they mean, and he's usually right. Every once in a while, I'm right, and then I have a big celebration, which is true. But both of us read the thing and were thinking along the same lines. We had to ask the question. When it was told to us, we understood, but that means, in my mind, that it wasn't written clearly, or we would have got it right out of, right away. So anyhow, that's just an aside. I think the rule book is quite simple and pretty good.
Yep. So that's all the components for the game. So we can go ahead and start talking about setting up then.
And before we start talking about setting up, I just want to let you guys know that we are going to keep everything looking like this. Like, we're going to just do it like this, but you would have side to side, basically. You'd have an opposing board here. Like, you'd sit across from each other.
Like me and Mickey are sitting now.
Yeah, but for simplicity in letting you see, since hero and villain set up exactly the same way, there's no reason to set up both players. So we're just going to show you like this. You should be able to understand. If you don't understand, just watch
our game.
2 seconds of gameplay and you'll see how it's set up.
Yep.
Alright,
so for setup, the first thing is everybody decides who's going to be hero or villain, or whatever you want to pick, if you want to do hero versus hero or villain versus villain. So what you're going to do is every player is going to grab one of these and place it in front of them, and then whichever hero or villain you pick, you grab their card and attach it, or you don't really attach it, you just set it next to it.
And then you're going to get your shield.
Yep, and then you get the shield, which you will place like this so your opponent doesn't really see.
Well, you don't have to do that right yet.
Right,
but that's for when you're rolling.
Yep, so just make sure you have this on hand. And then the next thing you're going to do is look at your hero card and see what their setup is. So it will tell you how much health they need to have.
Right. Okay, so we have Tough Nut here. So we just go down the little line here. It's going to tell us what he gets. He gets 30 health, Jeb.
All right, so I'll put that there and say the villain had 25.
And then there's a bunch of squares. So guess what the squares mean, since this is a dice game, Jeb? What do you think the squares might mean?
Dice?
Yay! Good job! All right. So we have a blue one. So he gets a blue die. And we have a yellow one. And we have a green one. And then we have two that look like the center of this. So we get two of these. All right. And then the last symbol on that is a lightning bolt, and it says ×2. So that means we get two of the lightning bolt faces, which ironically are wild cards.
Yep.
And we can put these on these two dice any way we want. I don't think Jeb and I have ever strayed other than putting them on one of each, but you don't have to.
Yeah,
So,
I mean my logic is there's stuff on the board that says action die equals action die. So if you start out with a side or a die with two sides on it and one with nothing, you're never going to be able to get that.
well, that one you're pointing to is non-blank too, so
Right, yeah.
and that makes it worse.
So, yeah.
Whereas down here it's like any action die. So anyhow, that's literally the setup. I will mention they do have all these blank sides here, which are just gray slots. Jeb and I have been playing where we do fill up everything, only for the fact is, and they're really, really light. Have no idea how much difference it makes. But in theory, you would think that if you had more weight on one side of the die, that you would have a weighted die. So we do fill up the empties. It's important to note, I suspect that it could happen. There is not enough gray ones to fill in all the empty spots on all the action die.
So if somebody was trying to collect action die and only put one side on each of them, they...
Right. Well, I mean, in theory, you could do that real quick, trying to just keep them from the opponent, and then you wouldn't... it would take a couple turns before you were at least able to fill them with something. I suspect it doesn't affect the... I mean, we're not in Vegas. I don't think it's going to do that much, and
there's not $100,000 on the line,
and I roll awful enough, so it doesn't really matter. Anyways, just wanted to point that out. Is if we can, Jeb and I have been putting the gray sides in the blank spaces because it looks a little nicer too. So, anyways, so that's literally how you set up the game. That's
the rest that you would do is just make a pool of all the components, and we wouldn't have it on this side of the thing. We'd put it in between us, and then all of these will be in between us
off
as
to the
well,
side, whatever. Jeb, show him that card real quick so we can just show him real quick like a difference.
This one?
Yeah. Okay. So notice this guy, he gets 25 health. He gets a blue, a purple, a yellow, and a yellow. 100% totally different from that. Then he gets one action die and only one lightning bolt. So they really did make the starting supply for each of the characters a little bit different.
And then the last thing for setup is to give the first player token to the villain player.
Correct.
And if you're doing a hero versus hero sparring match or whatever, yep. So that's everything for setup. So we should probably talk about how to play now, right?
Let's talk about the symbols on the board real quick since they're so simple before we talk about playing.
Okay.
All right. So on the inside, in case you want to not be like Jeb and just call it fist and muscle and stuff like that. So the fist is actually called might. The muscle is actually called energy. The shield is called toughness. The swirly arrow is called agility. Is that what you would have called that?
I kind of think of it as a swirly arrow, but then it's kind of like I wanted to say like a dragon tail or a wispy road or something like that.
Okay, so we have no idea what way Jeb would have gone on that.
Because I don't know what Jeb would have done.
And then the atom thing is called X Factor, and then the lightning bolt is a wild. Okay, so hopefully you can see these, and since these are all the same, it's going to give you enough to know. So some of the symbols that you have, no dice. So this guy just has no dice. He just always gets this, and it even says permanent on it. A hexagon, and it says any die. Literally that means it can be any die. It doesn't have to be a particular face. Doesn't have to be, it can be either of these, and it can just go on there. When you see a symbol, like this one is toughness, you have to have that side. So it can either be a side that you were able to build on one of your action die, or it can be a shield on another die. Important to note that each of the colors have higher odds for one particular element or trait or whatever they're called in this game. Okay, so again, this would be any die. Any die. The symbols are self-explanatory. A couple of the ones we haven't gone over. This is, and the squares are always going to be an action die.
Yep, hexes are the trait dice. And
right. Well, the hexes, I mean, the hexagons can be like any die, but the squares are always going to be an action die. The two differences are, this is a non-blank action die, and then this gray one says any action die. But these squares must be action die. Notice over there that gray hexagon says
non-blank die.
Right. So some of them need to be, doesn't matter what the symbol is, but it can't be blank. And a blank on a trait die looks like that. And that's really it for the symbols. I'm sorry. Except for some of the ones on the side here. These are your modifiers for your attack, modifiers for your defense, and little special things that help you. That power-up section over there is where it helps you build your die and do other things. So I guess that's the last component would be, this is the attack section, this is the defend section, and that far right is called the power-up section. So, and we'll get into detail about that actually right now, because Jeb's going to start talking about how to play.
Alright, so at the beginning of the round, phase 1, both players are going to do this at the same time. They're going to put up their little face guard, shield, sneeze guards. And they are going to roll all their dice and initiate actions.
Well, I kind of messed up my die, I think, a little bit when I was messing around, but that's alright. I got two that are just
lightning bolts.
Right. So simultaneously, you guys roll your dice, and then you can start placing onto the board. Okay? So we talked about some of the spaces, and I think any die is kind of self-explanatory. Non-blank is kind of self-explanatory. Things like that, and if it has a symbol. Some of the things that might not be as clear is some of these spots say immediately. That says immediately. This says immediate.
Permanent. There's during power up. This round. They have when they can be activated. Right,
they have when they can be activated. And I think one of the most important one, because it's most important during the rolling phase, is these ones that have immediately, and then you place a die. So what happens there is, so since this can be any die, I'm like, well, crap, I got two blanks on that. I can't do anything with them. So, and these, granted, these are different on each hero, but this guy says, immediate, gain one might or one tough, place it on the action die, and immediately re-roll it. So both my action die are blank. So I'm going to take one of them, place it there, and then I can immediately get a might or a toughness, which that's toughness, and that's might. So I can take one of those. I'll take the toughness. I can pop one of these sides out here. And then, like it said, re-roll it. And I ended up with another blank. Notice that I can't pick the one that I placed there. You can't... the rules state that when you place a die on one of the immediate ones, it's locked in. Like, that's it. This spot can't be used again, and you can't take that die off for any reason. So unless there was something that's later on, if they did an expansion that says you can use a die that you already placed on an immediately space, and that would be really wordy, and nobody wants to do that, so they probably wouldn't. Anyways, important to know, there's a few, there's an immediate, 2 immediate spots over there.
3.
3.
Yep.
So when you place them, they would happen right then. You don't have to wait for the phase to occur.
Right.
And that's particularly important on the power-up, because power-up is the last phase you go through. Yep. Right, so then I would look around and I'd be like, well, crap, now I have nothing to do. And a perfect example would be like, that says I get to re-roll 1 die. Can I re-roll this, Jeb?
Nope, you already placed it.
I already placed it on an immediate. Alright. So I probably wouldn't do that. I would probably use it on one of these any die things. So let's get a base attack going.
Oh, base attack. What does that mean?
That means my attack now has a base.
So what if you didn't have a base and you tried to add a kicker or a multiplier?
Oh, well, since I have nothing to add to, I cannot do that.
Right. So you don't default a 0, like you can't have a 0 base attack and just start adding kickers. So, and then I guess we should say what a kicker is. It's pretty much a modification to your base attack.
So I don't know if you can see it, but you have this section here is base attack, this section here is kickers, and this is attack multipliers. Keep in mind that they tell you 1, as many as you want. There's the infinity symbol, and 1. So you can't, if you had enough die, you can't load up all the die here and then have a base attack of 3, 6, 11. You pick one of these, and if you can get it, that's your base, and then you can start messing around with the kickers, and then you can start messing around with the multipliers. So the boards are really nice. They tell you only 1. Actually, this is a must 1 to get any of these. Mm-hmm. And then this is a must 1 to get any of these.
Yep, the defense works the same way. It has base defense, defense kickers, and defense multipliers. So.
And so this guy is another example of a little bit of how they tweaked based on the character. So this guy comes in with a base defense of 1. So he can go right to kickers with the dice.
Right.
However, if he wants to get his base higher, that negates the base 1.
Right.
So if I get this base 4, I don't have a base of 5. It literally says unless superseded. So superseded would mean if I did the 4, 3, or 2.
And never do this for this guy. It's just a waste of a die.
That would be a Jeb move.
Yes.
Alright, so that's how the attack and defense sections of the board work, and then the last phase is power-up phase. All kinds of different things.
Whatever it says next to it is what it does. Like, some of them are based on what your opponent does. Some let you gain new dice. Some let you gain faces, and this one lets you do exchange. So that's the kind of categories of things they let you do.
Right. And so when it says get new faces, they're talking about these. Yep. And building these action die.
And you gain new dice. It's these.
Which are called, it literally says trait die on it.
Yep. And then there's gain a new action die, which is that one.
Okay. So. And so that's really honestly it. So if I place these dice, I probably don't have one there, and I have a wild.
You do a fist on that.
Okay.
You want?
Sure, and then we can come over here with oh yeah, let's do that. That's perfect.
All right.
Okay, so then the other person would have done the same thing, and then once you guys look at each other and like, I'm ready.
You go to phase 2.
Yes.
Which is reveal, attack, and defend in turn order.
Boom. So the turn order is important in this game because, as you guys probably suspected, you're trying to knock the other guy out. The rules of the game are as soon as somebody reaches 0, the game is immediately ended. You don't finish the round. It says as soon as you're at 0, it ends. And you'll actually see it in the game that we recorded for you. End game becomes huge on who's going first and what you're going to do for a strategy if you're able.
Yep.
Anyhow.
All right, so we're assuming Tough Nut is the first player in this
particular turn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing you do in this phase is everybody reveals. Then you're going to determine the attack and defense totals, and then you are going to reduce the health totals. So the way it works is, since he's first player, he's going to add up his attack.
So I have a base attack of 1. I have a kicker of 1, so I'm swinging for 2.
And say his opponent had 1 defense.
They would take the 1, subtract it from the 2, and he would take 1 point of damage.
All right.
So basically, what happened was we looked at this, we looked at my opponent, whatever they had going on here, did the comparison, whatever the net effect of those numbers are, is the reduction in health. That's not rocket science. Probably you guys were like, why are you even talking about this?
The key is the first player resolves his attack first, and then the second player is going to resolve his attack. So say he had an attack of 2, and then what is your defense?
Big fat 0. Yeah, so I would
Tough
take...
Nut.
Oh, 1.
Yeah.
So I would take 1 point of damage.
Yep. So that's resolving the attacks. So phase 3 is the power-up, and this is done in turn order. So starting with first player, you are going to go down your list. You don't have to do it in that order. You can pick
you just roll down until you see the first set of die.
Yeah.
So there's my first set. Which one's that one, Jeff?
That says gain a new action die and a non-wild face.
Okay, so that means I get to take a new blank action die, and I get to choose any face from the supply except for the lightning bolts, because again, these are the wild. So I don't know, I'm Tough Nut. I'm gonna take a fist.
All right.
And so I would immediately put that on, and then I would have this die for next turn.
Yep, and that's the only one that we have for power-up, so it would go to your opponent, and they would do their power-ups. And then after that is phase 4, the cleanup. So you are going to clear all your dice from the board. You can, I guess at that point, you can reassign the faces on the action dice. And then you see who the player with the lowest health is. And in this case, the villain has less life. So now first player gets passed to the villain. And that's the end of the round.
Right. Just to reiterate a couple things, in case, I don't know, just maybe help clarify. So attack and defend, first player does their attack, and defend is kind of like phase 1 for both players. Then turn order starts again for the power-up phase. You might be because we didn't read you all the power-up phase, but you might be wondering why that's important. A lot of the times you probably will be able to resolve it simultaneously, but there are penalties for your opponent on some of those spots, which could cause them to lose life.
Yep.
Or if the supply is low on something, whoever gets to go first is going to get first choice. Yep. So turn order is very important in power up, even though sometimes it's going to seem like, why can't I just do this all at once? But if you don't do it in turn order, and either the supply is low or the health is low, you guys could mess yourself up. So that's the reason why turn order is important for the power up phase.
Yep. So we'd clear off all these dice, and then we just go to the next round. Which
right. And now I have an extra die, and I would get to roll again. right? Oh, look, blanks again. I would probably do this. See, I have a built-in mechanism with these, with this any die thing of, you know, being able to add faces. So this time I would probably take this guy, put it over here, and do an action die. Maybe not.
You don't get blue, do you?
Yeah, it's red or green. I mean, I might not do that because this one has better odds of re-rolling a nothing, and it's still early in the game. I'm starting to talk about strategy a little bit, but anyhow, you see, you can get a feel for how all the interaction is. You just keep going back and forth
until somebody hits
until somebody hits zero, and that's really the whole game. And that might sound really simplified, but it at its base, it really is simple, but it's not. It is very much a second guess your opponent, and you're at the mercy of some die. But there's always something you can do with your die on this board, which they did a really good job of. You don't usually end up with a 100% dud.
Right.
Like, there's usually some place you can put it.
You only get a dud when you do your re-rolls and you get
Exactly.
a bad roll again. So, because you only have a finite number of re-rolling built into your character.
Right.
So.
Hopefully that made sense, because most of the time I say just watch us play a little bit. I'm going to have to admit, in this game, I don't think we really talk a whole lot other than, like, you hit me for this, I got your defense, I gained this, just because it's just not that hard.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll get a bang out of watching us because we gonna razz each other like we normally do, and I won't spoil who wins unless you want to just jump to the review, and then you'll find out. But anyways, the point is, I would still encourage it. It doesn't take that long to watch it, and you might pick up on something that we forgot to say or something like that.
Yep.
Anything else, Jim?
Nope. I think they're ready to watch us play a game.
You're right.